Well, welcome back to my Ford Transit Mk8 Campervan Build, and this is sort of the second episode on the van's electrics. So last time I got the 12-volt electrical system up and running and wired in an appliance, and this time I'm looking at some of the charging systems. So at the minute nothing is plugged in to put power back into those batteries. So I'm going to be getting this up and running today, which is my Victron DC to DC battery charger. In a lot of vans you will see something called a smart relay or a VSR, which is a volt sensitive relay being used, and what they do is when the van engine is running, power from the alternator is split between the starter battery and the service battery or the leisure battery. However, because this is a Euro 6 van, it has what's called a Euro 6 being a efficiency rating for Europe, where vehicles have to be more efficient. Because it has something called a smart alternator, that alternator varies its voltage all the time and for different reasons. So it's not generally a high enough voltage all the time to trigger that relay to then start charging the leisure battery. So you have to use something called a DC to DC charger, where the DC to DC charger is charging your leisure battery off your starter battery when the starter battery is being charged by the alternator, opposed to the leisure batteries being directly charged by the alternator. And also the reason, because I'm having this DC to DC chargers, the reason I haven't got my 12 volt leisure system, well, not 12 volt electric system, ground or the negative running to the chassis point, because I don't need to. So the Victron one, I've gone for the Victron one because one, I've got a Victron solar controller as well, which will be another video. And two, it's a slightly smaller form factor than some of the Sterling ones which lots of people go to, and it fits quite well in my cupboard, and I can control all of its settings and see what it's doing via the app for my phone. So this is the 30 amp model. They sell, I think, a few smaller ampage models as well, but this will be able to charge my leisure batteries at 30 amps whilst the engine's running. This is also quite a smart system. Some different systems you have to wire up to an ignition live, so a wire in the van when the engine's running, that wire comes live and that tells the DC to DC charger to turn on and start charging the leisure battery. This one is smart enough to realise when the engine's running, will automatically turn itself on and off. So on the 12 volt installation video, whilst I was doing some of those wires, I also started to run the DC to DC charging wires. So the 16mm wires, both black and red, positive and negative, running through the walls and through the conduit to the starter battery, and I need to get that all wired up. On the Ford Transit Mk8, the starter battery sits underneath the driver's seat. At the minute the wires just in it are putting it into the leisure system, but there's no power at this moment going into the actual battery to battery charger itself. So I'm going to get that all wired up. So to mount the Victron DC to DC charger, which I'm going to start here, I need to run two cables, positive and negative, from one of the conduit lines back there all the way down to the battery, which is under the driver's seat. Hopefully that should be alright, but I've got to run some reasonably thick sized cable. I've got to run this 16mm cable through the 25mm channel, which it does fit, but it's going to be quite tight, all the way through. Unlike a split charge relay, where you would normally just run a positive cable and then use the vehicle negative for the negative connection, this particularly wants to be done with the black negative from the van's battery all the way through to the charger, all the way through to the DC charger itself, which is good for me because I'm not actually using, for the 12 volt leisure system, I'm not using the van chassis as a negative or an earth whatsoever. So I need to connect both these wires through some of the smaller holes in the back. Through some of those lines up there. But the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use this pipe puller I got from B&Q for about £8. So just thread it into the hole and just carry on pushing until it comes out the other end. So we now got the other cable coming out here, and we'll attach the wires to it. So the plan is just to tape the wires to this and then pull it through. That's the plan. Oops, oh dear. Okay, push again. Brilliant, right. Running the two 16mm squared cables through the 25mm conduit didn't go exactly to plan. It doesn't fit very well, so I had to do a little bit of changing to get it to work the way I wanted the cables to run. At this stage it was fine to do, but I should. Right, so I need to wire the black cable and the red cable to the positive and the negative of the starter battery. The red cable is going to be fused as well with a MIDI fuse, and the fuse is going to be just as close as I could possibly make it to the terminal. The reason is, the idea of fuses is they're protecting your wires, so if excess ampage was drawn through the wire, that the fuse would break or burn out first before your cables would potentially burn out and be a fire hazard. So from the looks of these, I think they're good. They're M6s. Yes, they are. Brilliant. So just the same as I've done in the other video, in my 12-volt video, I'm just going to make up my battery cables. So these are the fuses I'm going to use for this. I think they're called MIDI fuses, and it's just going to go in there, and then each wire is going to join to it. So now I can get these, all connected up. I've got to press record, but I've now got one connected up, and then I've dropped my bit down the side of the battery. The Ford Transit does have a dual starter battery option, which some models come with. This one doesn't, so that's what this bit of plastic was. It held the battery in place. So at the minute the positive cable feeds into this isolator, so it's disconnected, and then it's going to feed into the input in the charger, so that's what I'm going to wire up at the minute. So I've just taken the fuse out of the positive cable linking the battery to this, and then this is isolated off, so there's no power going through the system at the moment whilst I'm going to wire it up. So input wise for these, it's just there's no lugs involved, it's just taking off that, putting it in there and screwing it closed. I mean, I didn't need to take the fuse out actually, because the isolator is off anyway. So when you power on this device for the first time, you need to not have anything on the output. So although it's isolated the battery, there are still other things connected to the system, so I'm just going to remove it's going to unplug the positive from the system. So I've just grabbed the manual and I'm going to run this in charger mode. So I need to disconnect the remote on and off wire bridge, which is this little bit here which connects in there. Connect the input supply cables, which is done. Open the Victron app to set up the product. Then check the correct charging algorithm is set for my battery type. Connect the batteries to be charged, and replace this to activate the product. So these connected. All I should have to do is turn my big isolator at the top, and things should happen. So 3, 2, 1. Oh, the blue light came on. So let's open up. Well, let's open up the Victron app and see what happens. There we go. It's found the smart charger. Connecting. I think it's 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. It's currently in power, so it's connecting still. Right, so one of the things it said it might be worth trying is completely removing the device from Bluetooth. Forget device. And then opening the app again. And so we're going to try turning on airplane mode, turning on Bluetooth, and then reactivating everything. I mean, I'm wondering if I'm getting the password wrong, because I don't know what I presume it's 000 000 because that's what it was for the smart charger. Okay, we're in. Now. Cool. So I want to set this to AGM. Well, there's only one AGM, so I guess it's that one. Right, so check the battery. So if I turn that to on, powers up the system, and replace this. Alright, let's turn the engine on in the van and see what happens. So I've just turned the engine off now, so I want to see what's going to happen. Cool, and it's now shut down the device. It detected the engine shut down. Well, that pretty much concludes this episode of installing the Victron DC to DC charger. So now whenever I'm driving along or have the engine started, it's going to charge my leisure batteries. So once again, thank you for joining me. Feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, bye.